Network.
Hey up, it's Rob here. I thought I'd do just a kind of like impromptu live thing, as one does these days, about these things, WIDI Masters, or even these things, the WIDI Jacks, because I'm getting lots of questions about them here and there and everywhere, and so I thought, well, you know, why not do a thing, just a demonstration of what they can do. Now, I appreciate that this isn't going to be a really deep and powerful kind of demonstration. This is going to be just like a basic introduction, because what I want to do at some point later on is hook up about, I don't know, 8 or 9 instruments via this. I've got 8 of these and 1 of these, so I can do a maximum of 9, and then do it like just like a performance, and just let you kind of experience how this all just works in that age-old tradition. So if you have any questions about WIDI, please do throw them my way. I don't claim that I can answer them all, but I'm testing stuff for them. I'm not getting paid for any of this. Every single one of these that I own, I've bought and paid with my own cash. This is just a pre-production prototype, which I will show you a little bit later on. See, let's get my orientation. So this is WIDI Jack. I always think of that. What's that film within the film of Tropic Thunder? Simple Jack. Yeah. So for some reason, it always springs to mind. So I thought, I'd demonstrate a bit of that for you and answer any questions you might have, and show you stuff. I suppose the first place to really start, if we just switch over to this camera, okay, is the actual products themselves. So this was the first one. This is WIDI Master. I need to be conscious of where I should really kind of draw a thing. So if I move that over there, I know that anything to the left of this is in shot. Good. So this is WIDI Master, and as you can see, it is a 5-pin DIN MIDI plug, just like any other plug. And it has this little bulky piece here, which contains all the gubbins and the hardware. And it's this little arrow here just denotes that you've got to put it into the out port, because the out port's where the voltage comes from. And then just here, you've got a small 2.5mm TRS socket, and that is so that you can connect this, and this is the MIDI in. So it's like a little dongle. So you might not want to control both, but you can if you want. And that just plugs into the side there. And so this unit goes into MIDI out, and this one goes to MIDI in. That's as simple as that. And there's nothing fancy about this. This is just a MIDI plug wired to a 2.5mm TRS jack. And that is if you're interested, that's a Type B TRS MIDI jack, because there are 2, Type A and Type B. So this is a Type B. But we'll come to how this can be overcome later on. So this is the this is the brains, this is the gubbins. This contains the receiver and the transmitter, and the firmware is all stored on here. And there is one further thing that I need to show you. Just, I don't know if you can see it on the camera. Let's bring this this way. It probably won't focus on it now. Get it in the light. That's it. You see just there's a little kind of little button, just about there. So that little recessed button is just like a service option, and you just press and hold that down for about 10 seconds. I think they changed it because we gave some feedback about how easy it was to knock that and put it into a mode that then you can't get out of unless you have the app handy. And I can't show you the app because I'm using my mobile phone just here to give you this camera shot. So, but there is a WIDI app available. So that is your out, and that is your in, and that is a WIDI master pair. And I've got one of these connected to my KX88 controller just over to the left of me here. I don't need the WIDI in because, or the in connection, because I'm not taking any MIDI into it, but I could if I wanted to. And as soon as you plug this into a MIDI port, so for example, you have, I've just got this isn't connected to any power, but as soon as you plug this in, like, let's get this right way around, like so, then it draws the power from the WIDI bus, sorry, the MIDI bus, WIDI, you know what I mean. And it powers up, and the first thing it does is it looks for another WIDI master within range. And the range of these things has been tested to around 20 meters successfully with a stable connection. You could probably get more, but yeah, the first thing it will do is it will look for another WIDI that's calling out in the vicinity. If it finds one, it will automatically pair with it. Now, at the moment, it will automatically pair with the first one it finds. The new app and the new firmware, which is being finalized at the moment, will allow you to set up a permanent connection between any two, or sorry, up to 4 WIDI masters. So the app will be able to manage the routing for you and set that so that every time you turn them on, they'll always connect to the same ones. So that's essentially what it does. If you don't want them to connect to another WIDI, then what you do is, let me just bring my screen up here. So I've got my Apple Studio, Midi Studio open, and then I just click on the little Bluetooth tab, and you see that you get this little Bluetooth window, and any WIDI masters that are being picked up by Bluetooth of your Mac are connected here, and you can just connect and disconnect. And once you've connected them here, then they're now available as a MIDI port, a Bluetooth MIDI port on your computer, be it a Windows or a Mac machine. So once you've done that, then of course you can route it through to your Logic, your DAW, whatever it might be, and it just shows up as a MIDI port. Now, if you are a Windows user, Windows handles Bluetooth MIDI slightly differently, and there is a solution to that coming, certainly from these guys. But you might need to just double check how your system handles Bluetooth MIDI. Usually it's within the DAW on a Windows machine, but with Apple it's within the actual OS. So that is WIDI Master. And before I move on to this little thing, WIDI Jack, I'm just going to go through the questions because I can see them piling in. So let's see who's been asking questions. Right, so sorry. First of all, hello, Native VS, Sasquatch, Asio Head, Andrew Brooks, Synth Addict, Wagyu. Hello to all of you. Welcome. So the first question here, let's see. Can the WIDI Master transmit on more than one channel e.g. a MIDI controller with keyboard split. So yeah, the MIDI channels are basically the only difference between one of these and a MIDI cable is that this just connects using a radio signal. So you can do anything you can do with a regular MIDI cable with one of these. It's just that you're just omitting the cable connection and just replacing that with Bluetooth. So you can't necessarily specify these to operate on different MIDI channels. So if you can't do it with a wired MIDI, you probably can't do it with this. But this just gives you, this is essentially replacing a cable with a radio connection. So I hope that makes sense to you. So Sasquatch then follows that up with, this product appeals but cables just work. And yes, they do. And there's this, I don't think these will ever replace cables, not yet anyway. But yes, you can stick with one or the other. I'm currently using both here, so it's entirely up to you. Native ES, so if you have no output, you cannot use them. Let's see, that's where this little thing will come in, and I'll explain that in a minute. But with these, yeah, that's right. If your device doesn't have a MIDI out, then it won't be able to draw power on one of these units. But that's why this thing exists, so I'll explain that later. As you go ahead, and it's Bluetooth. It's Bluetooth 5, so it's the latest version of Bluetooth, so it's faster, it's more stable, and it works. Yeah, it's not Wi-Fi. That's what one thing it's not. So yeah, just to be clear, this is absolutely Bluetooth. So here's this thing that keeps coming up. Oh, but the latency. I get it, all right? But listen, I've had these now for some while, and I have yet to have any latency issues whatsoever. At all. None. Zero. The latency is obviously there. Technically, it is there. Just like there's latency between the sound leaving my mouth and reaching your ears, or this broadcast. There's latency in everything, but it is imperceivable with this. They've got the latency down to around 3 milliseconds. Now that's the lowest claimable figure. I'm sure that depending on the situation you're in, it'll be worse or better, depending. But they've done extensive testing, and they have got the latency down to around 3 milliseconds. Now, lots of people have, when I say this, they go, yeah, well, what about when somebody's, got the microwave going, or their mobile phones in the vicinity and all this kind of stuff. They have tested these with interference going on, and most of the time it doesn't affect it. All I can really say is, if you don't believe me, try it. That's the only thing I can really say. So the latency has been an issue in the past, but it's certainly not an issue now. So there we go. Let's scroll through, see if we've got any more questions before we move on to the other thing. Just trying to filter through the general conversation. Okay, so this is a really good question. I wonder how they work in a live environment with loads of signals flying around. This is a very valid point. If you're going to be in a pub, a club, small venue, large venue, there are going to be lots of people there with mobile phones. There'll be, those mobile phones will be connecting through Wi-Fi, through 3G, 4G, 5G. There's going to be all sorts of stuff around. I appreciate that, and I cannot honestly tell you how well they will work in such an environment, because we're currently in a situation where we can't really test this stuff anywhere. But I am fairly familiar with how Bluetooth works, because the company I work for, that I do a day job for, we have a solution which is a real-time location services solution that uses Bluetooth devices, Bluetooth 5 devices around a building to pinpoint locations. And these work in large office environments, small office environments, all over the place, where there's a lot of interference, such as Wi-Fi and mobile phone signals. And the channel hopping feature of Bluetooth naturally skips through the frequency range that it operates in, is pretty damn good in Bluetooth 5, and it means that if it does encounter interference, it will very quickly, within microseconds, nanoseconds or whatever, skip to another section of the range that it's operating in. So this does that. It will hop and skip through the range, the bandwidth range, and hopefully it will not be too affected. However, I'm not in any way able to prove or disprove that at the moment, as nobody is, because of the situation we find ourselves in. So Andrew's talking about the range. So yeah, I did mention it earlier. So they say on the back of the packet here, if I can bring this in this way and tilt it that way and push it that way. There we go. So they say on the packet 20 meters without obstruction. Okay. So they've done tests of 20 meters, clear line of sight between the device and the device that's sending and the device that's receiving. I'm in a studio here, which is, I don't know how many feet by how many feet this is, and I've had absolutely no issues at all. So it will be interesting to see how that plays out on a stage. Again, something we're going to have to wait and see. Right, Native VS says, I'm worried using Bluetooth when having lots of 50mm UHF transceivers in the area. It gives lots of intermodulations in that frequency range. Also, LED walls are most like the RF killer for gigs. Again, this is all hypothetical. We know that interference happens. The only way that we can test that is by sticking some people on stage, filling a venue with a good number of people, LED walls and all that kind of thing. There are going to be instances where probably, yes, the range, if you imagine like Pyramid Stage at Glastonbury with a huge amount of LED walls, then maybe the distance is too much, maybe the interference is too much. I don't know. So we shall see. But at the moment, I can't prove or disprove that because it's impossible. But yeah, there's going to be concerns, and there's only one way to test. Sasquatch, it says, does it work as master to many slaves? So yeah, this is what I was saying earlier. At the moment, it's peer-to-peer, so one WIDI master to another WIDI master, or one WIDI master, or multiple WIDI masters, all to a computer. So, for example, your Mac or your PC. The new firmware and new app, which is just being finalised, will allow 1 to 4. So you can do one WIDI master to 4 other WIDI masters. So you can have one controller connected to 4 separate synthesizers, and you'll set those on different channels, and then when you change your channel, your MIDI channel on your controller, it will connect with the right one. So yeah, it kind of works like that. So again, I can't go into huge amounts of detail because I haven't got that app or that firmware yet, but as soon as we do, I'll let you guys know. So I think that's kind of gone through all the major questions there. If I haven't answered, then let us know. So let's put this away now, just for now, and let me. Right, WIDI Jack. So these labels on here are homemade labels. I'll just take that off because these aren't silkscreen printed at the moment, so they will have all the appropriate stuff put on there. So this is WIDI Jack. How is this different to the WIDI Master? Well, not very, to be honest. The real difference here is the fact that it has TRS 2.5mm TRS MIDI jacks, and it has a USB connection there, which is purely power. There's no data going through here whatsoever. It's just power, and it's USB-C, so it's one of these USB-Cs. It goes in there. It is literally just power. So you got these 2 TRS 2.5mm, which are these things here. Let me just bring those in. Little 2.5 mils, and they're marked up. Well, they will be marked up when the silkscreen print is done, but I've done it with my little Dymo printer. So this connects here. This is the WIDI out. So you connect your MIDI out to this one here, and your MIDI into this one here. And on the back there is a small switch, which, if I bring that a little bit closer to the camera, allows you to switch between type A and type B, because companies in their infinite wisdom developed a number of different TRS MIDI protocol connections. So you have type A, which I think is what most Korg instruments have. Type B is different. There are some modulars I think use type B. So the beauty of this is that it doesn't matter what you use, because when you connect this to a type A instrument, you just flick it to type A, and if you connect it to a type B, flick it to type B, and you can do that hot switching, so you don't have to unplug anything. Another great thing about this is that if you want to move this MIDI connection from one instrument to another, as long as you keep the power connected here via USB, it doesn't matter whether you unplug any of these, the power is maintained, the connection's maintained, so you can then plug this into another instrument, another effects pedal or whatever, and the connection will stay the same. So that's possibly a useful thing. Another useful thing is that this little disc on the back, I don't know if you can see, there's like a disc outline there, that's mildly magnetic. And I'm just looking for something that's metal that I've got close by. But basically, you just snap that on and it will just attach to a metal surface and not slide. There's also this, it gets supplied with this, which is like a sticky back thing there with a metal disc, and then it just, so if your case is plastic, you can use that. So there you go. But essentially, internally, this is doing exactly the same thing as that. Exactly the same, except it's just connecting you differently. So the options that you have when you are eventually able to buy this, and the pre-orders are going up in a week or two, I think, you'll be able to, for €59, or if you've registered your interest already, €29, you will be able to buy one of these and your choice of cable connector. So if you're buying one of these to connect with, let's say a Volca, okay. So once you've extracted it from your backside, you will just buy the 2.5mm to 3.5mm cable. So this is 2.5 to 2.5, but you'll just buy the 2.5 to 3.5, and that cable set will come as part of your package. So your €59 or 29 if you've pre-registered will get you one WIDI Jack and one cable connection, in and out cable connection. Say for example you want to connect your WIDI Jack to something with a 5-pin MIDI connection, excuse me, then you just pick your WIDI Jack and you pick that appropriate cable connection. So for every WIDI Jack you buy, you will get your choice of cable connection. If you want to buy multiple cable connections, then you can do so. So you can specify, a variety. However, CME have told me that because they're not cable manufacturers, they're just buying these in, and so they might not be able to offer the best price on these cables. So they might come over as a little bit expensive when they sell them separately. So maybe you go and source your own. So yeah, that you cable connections. One end will always have to be 2.5mm, and then the other end can be, and the options that I think they're selling are 2.5mm TRS, 3.5mm TRS, 5-pin MIDI, 6-pin mini MIDI, and that's it, I think. Now, one thing I discovered today, which I think is pretty cool, because it just gives you options. So you remember with the WIDI Master that I said that it derives its power from the MIDI bus, and the MIDI bus should output, if it's compliant with MIDI spec, it should output either 3.3, which is a more common thing nowadays, 3.3 volts, or 5 volts if it's an older machine. And that voltage comes out of the MIDI out port, and that's what is used to power the Bluetooth system in here. I wasn't sure whether this WIDI Jack was only capable of being powered via the USB connection. I thought, well, that's, it's an extra cable. It's a bit of a pain. Well, I actually found out this morning because somebody asked me on one of my YouTube videos, can I derive power through one of the TRS slots? And the answer is yes. If the MIDI device you're connecting this to has a powered 5-pin MIDI output, or even a powered TRS output, it can derive its power from there, which I think is it's a great option. So it means that you can use this on anything, and you don't always have to have the USB power supply connected. So that's an extra little bonus. Anyway, so how do these things work? Bloody well is probably the best way of putting it. Really, really, really well. You have to excuse, I haven't got the lighting set up as I would do for the show, so I'm probably a little bit dark and a little bit fuzzy, but that's not too bad at 8:30 on a Friday night. So before we move on to how are these working within a system, let's quickly go through, see if there are any other questions that need answering. Let me just move my mic back in here. So yeah, Native ES says modern Bluetooth has become very resilient. It really has. Again, like I said, in my day job, I do this. I do training on a number of things, and one of them is this real-time location service system that uses Bluetooth tags to locate assets and people in very large spaces, and it's robust as hell. I mean, it's being used, for example, it's being used throughout major airports in the world, like Heathrow have got. They're using it for condition monitoring on the baggage systems, and it's helped reduce breakdowns on the baggage system by something ridiculous, like 70 or 80%. It's crazy. It's very resilient, and it's and it'll only get better, I suppose. So Sasquatch asks, will do any jack type? Sorry, that's not a question. That's a statement. It will, as long as one end is 2.5mm to go into the WIDI Jack. Then the other end can have 3.5mm TRS, 5-pin MIDI DIN, 6-pin mini MIDI connections, which you don't see many of nowadays. So it covers all bases. Let's see. Asio Head says, I could see it working for a MIDI transport knob controller thing. Yeah, absolutely. There's a guy on YouTube, Alex Bourne, I can't remember his name. He is using a lot with guitar pedals, lots of different guitar pedals, all connecting through his iPad is his kind of central hub. Andrew says, what on earth have you been doing with Volkers? Are you not privy to the Synth Memes Facebook group? I thought it was kind of common knowledge what people do with Volkers. Sasquatch Roy has an NTS1, yeah, because that's easy to fit up your ass than a Volker. But yes, it does. This does have, again, you can't see it because it's pretty crap light, but the Korgs use 3.5mm Type A. So I was hoping that it would arrive today, but it's not going to arrive till tomorrow. I've actually got a 3.5mm to 5-pin MIDI Type A connection coming, so I'll be able to test this out with it. That'll be interesting. How annoying are you finding the losing config if synth loses power thing? Oh, hang on a second. This is live. Yeah. Yes, please. Waitress service. How am I finding the losing config if synth loses power thing? There is no configuration as such to lose. It's just a connection. So what happens if you turn your synth off, the connection breaks between either the computer that it's connected to or the peer-to-peer device that it's connected to. When you turn it back on, it will either seek to connect with the nearest available peer-to-peer, so the nearest available WIDI master, which you would assume would be the one it was connected to before it powered down. With the computer, then you will have to just go back into Midi Studio, for example, on the Mac, and just click connect again, just to bring it back into line. One of the other problems, let me just share this again. So the other problem is that you can't at the moment, you can't individually name them, so they all show up as WIDI master. You can go into the Midi Studio on a Mac, for example, and give them names there, but then once you've disconnected, then they just revert back to WIDI master. That's changing on the next firmware, so they tell me. So you will be able to call them, either WIDI master 1, 2, 3, or if you want to just leave them in a device, call it after the synth that you have going there. Right. Any more questions? There's lots. I really shouldn't have talked about the Volca thing. I thought that was just kind of common knowledge. Aren't you scared somebody might ask something awkward? I remember once in a course my screen was on the beamer and my MSM popped up. Yeah, that's why I've turned my email off and I don't have any messaging things popping up, just in case my wife decides to send me a saucy message. Chance would be a fine thing. Right, okay, so yeah, once the new firmware comes out and the new app, which will allow us to kind of do one-to-many, or it's up to 4 at the moment. I don't know whether they plan to go over 4, but it's 1 to 4. So you do 1 WIDI master to 4, and you can set that connection to always happen. Then it'll be interesting to see how that copes with powers off, and as soon as we get one, we'll let you know. So just to show you, let's get my other screen up here. So let me share my entire screen here. So this is my Mac Midi Studio. So if anyone uses a Mac, you'll be fairly familiar with this and the different routings that you have. And you have up here the Bluetooth button. So when you turn that on, you get this little Bluetooth config here. And all you have to do, as I say, is turn the WIDI masters on and then just connect them over here. And they will show up as Bluetooth MIDI devices in your studio here. And so at this point, you can, if you want to, go in and name them, but it will forget those names eventually. So I'm now going to change my screen and bring up Logic. And so this is just basic thing here. So I've got, as you can see here, these are all my ports available to me. Is that showing? Oh, do you know, that's weird, isn't it? When you share a screen, it's not actually showing the drop-down menus. Very odd. Maybe that's because, let me just share my screen as opposed to my application. Let's do that. See if that makes a difference. Yeah. So now you're actually seeing the everything that I've got. So this is my quite messy at the moment list of MIDI connections, and what I've got going is this is my KX5 here, sorry, KX88, not KX5. Try to sing this over your shoulder. And this is now connected to Logic through the computer, and I can just, for example, here I'm just choosing my DX5. And what's the best way of, I guess if I just to show you the latency thing, this is what I'm most interested in you guys kind of appreciating, because I know that it's one of the most common things, with the latency. So if I hit this with my fingernail, so you'll be able to hear me hitting the key and then hopefully the sound. So we just do this here. Are you getting that? Are you hearing my finger tapping the key and the note triggering at exactly as near as exactly the same time? Do you get that? That there is no latency, or no perceivable latency. There is latency, of course, but there's no perceivable latency. Come in, darling. Don't worry. It's not like the whole world can see you in your pyjamas. Thank you. G&T. So, yeah, just don't ask. ASIO Head says, scared to ask about it. Damn right, stop it. It's not a thing. So, can somebody confirm? Sorry, I'm bringing these messages up here. That this is. Yeah, that the latency is just basically not there. It's imperceivable. Of course, there's latency. It's mathematically impossible not to have latency, but it's there. But it's so imperceivable. And I wish I had an MPE controller here, because Roger Lynn has got some of these, and he was using it. See, it sounds fine. Thank you. Yeah, I'll tell you. You call her T's Maid. It's a G and T's Maid. So yeah, good. That's good. So you're getting that. So I've got this KX88. This is connected to my Mac, and then my Mac is just doing the distribution around the studio. So that was my DX5. This is the DX7. And it's, you know, there's no delay at all. Just switch an instrument. That's DX11. SY22. What else have I got switched on? I've got this. The TX7, and so it really is just, once you've got one of these connected, you just route it how you want to route it, and away you go. So what it's enabled me to do is to have this KX88 positioned in the middle of the room per se, and have it connected to my entire system through Bluetooth MIDI. And that's just a very simple solution that this can solve. Another one that I have tested but I haven't got linked up at the moment. So I did this thing. I want to do a thing next year, surprise, with the whole DX stuff. So I've got some plans. Can't say what they are, but I've got some plans. And one of the things I wanted to do was to set up a complete Yamaha Midi Studio, as it would have been in 1985 or whatever. So KX88 at the heart of it, that going into a QX3, and then the QX3 outputting to all the synths and the drum machines, and just daisy chaining every item, giving it a separate MIDI channel, and just doing it like that. So no hubs, no computers, just pure old-fashioned MIDI. That's it. So I stripped all the MIDI connections out and did that, and so the KX88 was going wirelessly via Bluetooth MIDI to the QX3, and then the QX3 was spitting out MIDI to the DX5, the DX7, the SY22, the RX5, the TX7, the RX17, and it worked beautifully, absolutely beautifully. And then I thought, well, what if I want to do that lot? What if I want to bring in, say, the Emax or the Z1 or even the Fairlight? How am I going to do that? And how could WIDI sort me out. So it's very simple. You take one of these and you plug this into the through port of the last item on the chain here, because the through port is also outputting the same voltage as an out port, so these will work in through ports as well. Plug this into the through port, you plug another WIDI master into the first device over on that side of the room, and then you can carry on using cables to daisy chain the rest of them. So you can use a WIDI master not just to connect an instrument to a computer or an instrument to another instrument, but you can use it to jump spaces from one MIDI rig to another by just clever use of the MIDI protocol and one of these. So there was another solution that just kind of materialized out of the box, and I thought, oh, that's good. So there are numerous ways of doing this. I mean, you know, if you're a live performer and you've got a keytar or a MIDI wind instrument, you might want to try and see how well you get on there. There's a guy on the WIDI Facebook group who's got a MIDI accordion, and he's been testing it since almost day one, and he says it's imperceivable. There's just no difference. You know, he plays in a lot of small pub venues around, I think might be Germany or Holland, I'm not entirely sure, with his WIDI accordion, which I'd never knew existed, and he has that hooked up to whatever, you know, synthesizer or instrument he's got over there, and he says it works flawlessly. So live performance, studio workarounds, I'm not entirely sure if it's worthwhile connecting an entire studio this way, because you will eventually probably end up spending a lot of money, because also with MIDI cable nowadays, you know, it's probably about a tenner for a decent length, you know, and these are 59, so it's not the most cost effective. And I guess you will eventually, if you're running a whole range of these, you're probably going to come up with some kind of, if not an interference issue, some kind of just connection black hole where you end up forgetting what's connected to what. And yeah, so I don't know, it's not all about replacing MIDI cables completely. It's about options, alternatives, in my opinion, and that's kind of how I see it. And right now it's answering all the questions. And you know, when I got this through from China yesterday, I kind of expected it to be a bit flaky, because this is a pre-production prototype. This is injection molded, and it's got marks on it, and it's not been, you know, it's just not fully ready. So I expected, you know, when they said, can you test it and let us know how you get on, I was expecting there to be issues. I literally popped it out of the bubble wrap, plugged it into my Uno synth, and it just worked. Just, you know, just exactly the same way as these things do. So yeah, I don't really know there's much more I can say about it other than it does work. And I'm not in their pay, so they're not paying me to say this, they've not asked me to say this, I'm doing this all off my own back. I've bought 8 pairs of these with my own cash. The only thing they've given me is, well, they've loaned me this to test. I buy everything from these guys, so I'm not, you know, not getting anything free. I'm not saying this as a shill. I am saying this as a user who is hugely impressed with how this technology is working, and I think everybody should just give it a chance. So there is one more product that I'll tell you about that they're coming up with shortly, but again, I'm just going to go through the discussion here and see if there are any questions that need answering. So let's see, let's go back to here's one question I'm going to answer, and I keep answering every time he asks it. No, you're not having my KX88. No, you'd have to prize it from my cold dead hands. So that's that. Let's see, what else have we got. There's well, yes, this is true. Native VS says there's a cheap one on eBay at the moment. I think it's a couple of £100. I paid less than that for mine. So let's see. Robbie's got all the tech, including the teas made. Yeah, so she'll like that. So here's another one. Let's see, Sasquatch. So if I plug it into a 4 MIDI channel controller and have the other WIDI master plugged into a MIDI router, it will happily carry the 4 MIDI channels simultaneously, just like a cable. Yep, exactly. That's the simplest way to think about it. It's not going to add anything magic in terms of MIDI routing. It simply replaces the cable, and so instead of wires, you have a Bluetooth signal. Other than that, the specification is exactly the same. You know, the capabilities that it has is exactly the same. But of course, having it as Bluetooth gives you some flexibility to mess around with routings without having to plug and unplug cables. Yep, me too. I didn't realise until fairly recently that the Stratotron patch, which is this, forms the basis of Emu's liquid stack sample, which is quite a popular sample these days, or back then it was. But let's see what else we've got. Any other questions? Lots of talk about Zuluk on here. Yeah, Zuluk's one of my favourite Jar albums. What about, here we go. So what about USB MIDI? Are there WIDIs to plug in there? Let me just check the other questions and then I'll circle back to that one. Oh, listen to me with my corporate bullshit speak. I'll circle back to that one. So Native VS and ASIO Head are backing up. Oh, that's a good point. That's a good question. Mr. Max says, I've had a couple of the Yamaha ones for years and never used them. Many have never ended up using iOS for music. So yeah, I've heard people with the Yamaha ones. They're the ones that mostly say, oh, latency this, because I believe Yamaha were using the previous version. I think they were Bluetooth 4, if I'm not mistaken. Bluetooth 5 has made significant improvements, and that's clearly demonstrated here. Roland have just launched some as well, but they're battery powered. You actually have like a AA or AAA battery in each plug, which is interesting. Why they didn't, I guess that saves them producing multiple versions, but yeah, we'll see what they look like. They could make them small, like those computer dongles. That's referring to the USB. So yeah, we'll come to that in just a moment. Any more questions that I need to answer? Do they talk about multiple WIDIs in the same room and interference? Says a buddy comes over with his. Oh right, okay. No, there's no kind of published data that says you can only have a maximum of these. I've had so at the moment I've got. So here's another example. Let me just call this up. So I've got a WIDI master going on in here. I've also got a WIDI master on the FS1R just here, and that's so what I'm doing is I'm sending data from my KX88 to the Mac via Bluetooth, and then the Mac to the FS1R via Bluetooth. So now we've got two things going through a computer. Again, can you hear me hitting the keys and the sound? So that's Bluetooth MIDI to Bluetooth on the Mac, and then Mac Bluetooth to the Bluetooth on the FS1R. So multiple WIDIs in the same room. I said at the top of the show that I was going to try at a later date when I have some time. I've got 8 pairs of these, and I've got 1 of these, so I can hook up 9 instruments. And what I want to do is hook up at least half a dozen, and then have them all connected to the Mac, and then run a sequence from Logic out to all of the instruments, and have the metronome going on in Logic to just see. It's probably the most accurate way I can measure any latency that's going on just there. So I don't know if that kind of answers your question, but yeah, I don't think there's going to be a massive problem, because again, the Bluetooth has, I'm getting a little bit rusty on it. I think it has 40 divisions within its frequency range. So I guess if you had 40 WIDIs, they would all be bouncing around, and hopefully, dynamically, they're not clashing. So you shouldn't have a huge. I mean, the more you have, the more chance there is of interference or things getting a little bit crossed over. But the way that Bluetooth handles that channel hopping is very fast, and it's very clever. And so, who knows? But again, you can. Lots of factors come in. If you've got certain instruments that are tucked away in the corner of a studio, they might not get a great signal, so that might give you an issue. But in terms of radio signals and stuff, I don't think there's going to be a huge amount, unless you're using radio mics and lots of other, different things going on. And I don't think the Wi-Fi thing will bother you. So again, these will, come in time, I guess. But right now, it seems to be doing the job. Right. So I was going to talk about USB, because you guys were asking about that. Let's just see. There's lots of. I can see the word Fairlight popping up. My brain is kind of attuned to that word. There's lots of Jean-Michel Jarre Fairlighty stuff going on there. I know where that machine is. Jarre series, or one of Jarre's series 2, the Zuluk machine. I know where that is. Right. Okay. One last question before I go on to the subject of USB MIDI. Have I tried these on a Windows machine? The answer, quite at the moment, is no. And there is. So the way that Windows handles Bluetooth and Bluetooth MIDI, because they are essentially kind of, although they use Bluetooth MIDI is just, you're not connecting over regular Bluetooth. It's a kind of a function of it. So at the moment, I don't think Windows itself can natively handle Bluetooth MIDI like macOS can. So macOS out of the box handles Bluetooth MIDI, as does iOS. But with Windows, I believe that it's managed via the DAW. So you have to then set things up at the DAW level. Whereas with Mac and iOS, it's at the OS level. So I haven't tried it. However, there is this new other solution that I'm going to talk about. Now, just to mention Roland said that they've launched their own Bluetooth MIDI dongles. And they've also launched a USB dongle that is specifically designed for Windows machines, so it will allow you to address the Windows, or allow Windows to address the Bluetooth MIDI API from that. So it kind of negates that thing. Basically, the Mac is the easiest way of doing it. So Mr. Max says the Yamaha ones couldn't be paired together; they just connected to Bluetooth host like an iPad. Yeah, I seem to recall that as well. And I also, going back to the Roland ones, according to their spec, the Roland Bluetooth MIDI dongles will only pair with other Roland Bluetooth MIDI dongles, so they won't natively pair with these, which is odd. Because these will pair with other Bluetooth MIDI devices, so I'm told, although I haven't got any to prove that. So that would make sense. it's BLE MIDI, yeah, the WIDI page, yeah. So yeah, right. So USB. Obviously, USB MIDI is something that is a thing nowadays. So there is a third product. Let me just see if I can call this up. So this hasn't. This will be the next thing that they do. So I really, what I'm about to tell you is just basically what I've seen on their page. So let me just go back here. Now let's stop that screen share. We'll start another screen share. We go to Chrome tab and we go here. So this is, let me just turn that off, WIDI U-host. So this will connect, as it says on here, this will connect USB MIDI and make it Bluetooth compatible. So you can plug your USB things in here, and then this will then transmit that data via Bluetooth. So let me just scroll through that screen, because I'm doing this off of a separate tab. Right. So yeah, basically you can connect USB devices via Bluetooth MIDI with this thing, and it kind of works. It's supposed to be working the same way as the WIDI Jack. So it'll be a small box that you can then use the USB connection. So for, the example they've got here is the Akai EWI USB. So you'll take a small USB cable from that into the WIDI U-host, and then that will then pair up with either a laptop, desktop with Bluetooth MIDI running, or another WIDI master, whether it's a WIDI Jack or the traditional 5-pin WIDI master. So they've got all of that covered, and that's the next thing. So WIDI Jack is about to go into production. So they're about 10 days away, I believe, from setting up the pre-order page for WIDI Jack. They've got the 3,000 plus registrants, so they'll that's all taken care of. And then once that's rolling, WIDI U-host is kind of next on the line. I don't know, I haven't got a date for that, but I'm guessing sometime in 2021. Now, given the speed, I mean, these launched, when did these launch? Early this year, I think. And then between that and getting to the point where they're like 2 weeks away from going into pre-sale, I reckon you'll start seeing these on the market early 2021, the WIDI Jacks, and then I reckon the WIDI U-hosts will probably be, I don't know, Q2, maybe Q3, I don't know, depends. But yeah, I think I've kind of exhausted the whole thing now. But what I wanted to do was just kind of explain, what's what, and show you how wonderful these things are. I mean, maybe I should... I'm kind of static at the moment. So, I need to set things up. I'll tell you what, let's see. Let me just rearrange a few things here. I'm just going to pop my headphones off. Okay, so let's just whack the Cobalt 8 out. Connect that power. Right. Oops. This is highly professional. This is live. This is what you get. Excuse me. Right. So let's do this and get this set up. How's that looking? Oh, that'll do. That's kind of, yeah. Right. So, we have one of those. Now I just have to look for the right cables. So here we go. Unfortunately, I haven't got any ones shorter than these. So it will look a bit messy, however. So the cable that I've got here is a 2.5mm TRS to 5 MIDI. Okay, so we're going to put both of those into the WIDI Jack. Now, I don't know, for those of you that pay any attention to me, and I don't blame you if you don't, the Model 8 synths seem to have an issue with power at the MIDI output. Now we think, because I've been sort of liaising with CME and Modal, who I've managed to get collaborating on this. Excuse me just a moment as I try and finagle. I really should get an extension there. Right, almost there. So where was I? Yes, CME and Modal are currently collaborating, and hopefully we'll come up with a solution shortly. What have I done with my... There it is. Right. But for some reason, this Cobalt 8, and I believe the Hydrasynth, the Argon 8, and I know for a fact the Sculpt and the Craft Synth do not output enough power, or any power, at the MIDI ports to power WIDI masters. Now, Modal have said, well, no, we are outputting voltage there, so we think it might be something to do with the grounding. But we're going to see how that works out. So anyway, by the by, let's connect this up. So, this gets around that problem. We don't need to worry about the MIDI port outputting power. So we're going to take the MIDI out, which is that one, and the MIDI in, which will be that one. Okay, so now what we've got is we've got the WIDI Jack here connected to the in and output ports of the Cobalt 8, and now we're just going to put in USB. So that's now flashing, and that's looking for another WIDI master. But because there isn't one available at the moment, they're all paired up. Let me just attach this just there. So because they're all not available, I'm going to pair this up with my Mac. So let me just switch to that screen. So now you can see that WIDI Jack is showing up in Bluetooth configuration. So I'm just going to hit connect. It would help if I actually hit it on the right screen. Oh, now I've disconnected them all. Duh. Right, connect. Okay. So fingers crossed. Let me just make sure that I've got all of those connected. That's because I disconnected them all. Now, right. Let me just. Got a terrible feeling that. Right. So we connect both WIDI masters up. And now that's the WIDI Jack. So we connect that up. Okay, right. Okay, now we're back in. Now we're back in the room. So as you'll be able to see, we've got a solid light there. Now if I go to Logic, and let's just bring that back up for me here. Fingers crossed. Let's turn on the Cobalt. Let's make sure we've got some audio here. Let me just put these in. So Cobalt's working, but it's also working from here. Let's just choose. So we got there in the end. It was my stupid fault for hitting the disconnects. But there you go. So we've now got Cobalt with the MIDI there, going through Logic. So it's fairly simple and straightforward. I can see your chat has gone off on a complete. You're talking about elephants and sound effects on Fairlights. I won't chip in on that one. Please do. What I will say is, do not take the library on the iPad app as the gospel for what was on the Fairlight Factory library. That's all I'll say. And I speak with some authority on that particular application. And I see some people are talking about these in the chat room. M Audio Mid-Air. It would be good to actually do a comparison, maybe. I don't know how we could test accuracy and latency, what a decent test would be. But yeah, obviously you think, this is what we've been using, this kind of thing. M Audio Mid-Airs, both of which, this one requires power, this one has batteries, all DC. These cables and stuff, and then we come down to something like something like this, or to something like that. We've come away. We've come some way. Right. Where are we? Let's see if we've got any questions here. Andrew, oh, the KX88 sounds amazing. Don't say it, I already know. Well, it's not that that's making the sound, although, do you know, I have to say, I do love the feel of the KX88. It is so nice. Is Robbie switching the Fairlight? Do you know, I'd love to. And it is, I think it's mostly wired in, but I was having a few problems with it the last time I had it on, and so it's I'm leaving it off. I need to spend a bit of time. It's okay, it's not too bad, but yeah. Is the M audio still legal? That's a good question. I haven't got. So it complies with Part 15 of the FCC. When was this made? It doesn't say on here, does it? Yeah, it'd be interesting to find out if that's still a little. I don't know. Sure, it must be. Process Network. Do you have an RK006? If so, can you try these in that hooked up to a key step or other USB keyboard? What's an RK006? Am I being thick? Sasquatch, can you clarify what an RK006? Can't think of that. Let me know. Mr. Max says, reason I mentioned the USB hub was I can imagine 16 of these CME things plugged in and more USB cables. Yeah. Yeah, I'm gonna have to wait until the U host is developed, completed before I can make any comments on how that's going to work with USB. But yeah, it's interesting. Behringer will create a mid-air next. Yes, we shall be discussing that on the show this week, but we're not going to give it a huge amount of oxygen because it's just not worth it. Used to have Andrew Brooks says Ramsey will be talking to the guy who makes the rack kit. Retro kits. Okay, so let me Google that. 06 retro kits. I always get this guy mixed up with this portable MIDI Gatemaster hub. Oh, is this the one that Ramsey was showing on his show, wasn't it? Yeah, that's interesting because that's. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe tomorrow you can mention to the guy to get him to send me one, and I'll test it. I'll happily test it with all of these. But it does look quite. Yeah, it's a nice little thing that. But yeah, I don't know. I haven't got one. Can't test it. Wouldn't know. I see that these are now in the wild. The 2600s. Be interesting. So come on, Wagyu, videos, please. I want to see this thing working. Anyway, it's coming up. What's it? 9:20. So how long have we been streaming for now? Oh, hour and a quarter. Blimey! I intended this to be a short thing. So Stop already, Andrew, please. Yeah, so I don't know whether I accomplished anything here or not. Hopefully you guys have seen WIDI in action, whether it's WIDI Master or WIDI Jack. Hopefully I've answered your questions. I guess really the proof is in the pudding, and so why not buy one and test it, or buy two and test them. If you register for WIDI Jack now, I think you can still get in there. You'll be able to buy it at €29, $29 a piece, and not 59. So you pre-order at the early price, and it's only after that do you pay the full price. So if you really are interested, get a WIDI Jack, and that will, sort you out with whatever synth you've got. I guess in a way, WIDI Master is kind of limited because it's 5-pin DIN, whereas WIDI Jack can be anything that you want it to be, really. So get in there and order a couple at €29 each, $29 each, whatever. What have you got to lose? If you genuinely think you can make use of it, give it a go. If not, I'll buy them second hand off you. Because I'm going to kit out as much as I can with it, or certainly give myself enough options. Right. Okay, so I'm going to sign off now and go and be sociable with my family, because I've got a very, very long journey to make tomorrow, picking up some cool bits that I will have on the show, or some of which I'll have on the show, not all of which, but some of which I'll have on the show on Sunday. Speaking of which, we are back on there at 8 p.m. UK, 3 p.m. East Coast, midday West Coast. We don't have a special guest this week, so it's just the three of us. We're going to be talking. Here's a sneak preview of what we're going to be talking about this week. We are going to be talking about things that, well, we can't not talk about swing. So we're going to talk about swing, but we're not going to give it a huge amount of oxygen, as I said before. We'll mention WIDI Jack. We've got things like Akai's drum synth plugin. We'll be talking about that. There's some Valhalla updates to some of their freebies. There's the fantastic Opzilla 4-operator FM synth plugin. We've got Cherry Audio's Surrealistic MG1 Plus, Sine Vibes Node plugin for the Korg log engine. Of course, the weekly poll discussion as well, and Acoustic Samples B5 plugin. We might have some more things coming on there. So yeah, some interesting topics to be had. So yeah, join us on Sunday. Hopefully I'll stay awake, because I'm going to be absolutely shattered after tomorrow. But yeah. So, Asio Head says, play a song first, Robbie. It's the new thing to do. End the stream with a sing-along. Is it really? Is that a thing? You're welcome, Andrew. Anytime. Seriously, if you are in any way interested in connecting MIDI devices together wirelessly, I can't recommend these highly enough. I see. Is it a Gaz thing? That he plays a tune? Well, he's using modular, so it's all playing a tune for him. Let's see. When did that change? Yeah, I know. How's that? It's a bit of FS1R and Cobalt 8 badly played by short stubby fat fingers. Reminds me of the Wave Station. Yeah. That's the FS1R that's doing that rhythmic thing. So that's it's not wave sequencing, it's formant sequencing. So I guess it's kind of a similar thing. This is one of my favourite FS1R patches. Wrong chord. Oh, gee, I can't remember how to play that. I really, really do need to get some proper lessons, I think. Otherwise, I'm always going to be... Oh, how's it go? How's it go? Hang on. Here we go. I'll get it right this time. No. There we go. Vangelis brutally slaughtered. Absolutely slaughtered, but that's one of my favourite FS1R patches, that. Anyway, indeed, China definitely probably one of my first kind of synthesizer albums that I just could not stop listening to. That and Tomita, Snowflakes. Yeah, so I'm not going to try and do anything else. Oh, I see Manny's in the in the chat room. Got to behave now. So somebody is commenting from Facebook, but they haven't aligned the app. Unique features of looping envelopes, multiple. Oh, is that maybe that's Manny? I don't know. Yes, maybe I really ought to do something. Do a thing on the FS1R, but I've got to fully learn how to use it, because it's so there was an analogy made by somebody that said it's like, it might have been Manny, it's like painting the Sistine Chapel through a letterbox. But I've got some tools to hopefully help me learn it a little bit better. Right, I'm going, guys, because it's 9:30. I've got a very early start tomorrow, and I will see you on Sunday, 8 p.m. UK, 3 p.m. on the East Coast, 12 p.m. on the West Coast. See you Sunday. Have a great weekend. I hope those of you that are celebrating Thanksgiving this weekend, I hope you're having a fantastic time. And I will see you all soon. Take care. Bye bye. Oh, I'll tell you what. Let's go out properly, shall we? Let's do this professionally. Once again, goodbye.